Joe, would you read where it says quadratic equations?
Quadratic equations have two, one, or no real number solutions. Before you solve a quadratic equation, you can determine how many real number solutions you have by using a discriminant. The discriminant is the expression under the radical sign in the quadratic formula. The discriminant of a quadratic sign can be positive, 0, or negative.
So, if we are looking at this, if this b squared minus 4ac, that part, comes out to be positive, what that means is you will have two solutions. If it is 0, you have one solution, and if it is negative, you have no solution. Okay? So when we are looking at that, that's what determines it. So when we're thinking about this, and so we're still going to be doing the same thing we did yesterday with the quadratic equation. I'll give you a chance to sing again in a few minutes, so not to worry about that. So when we look at the discriminant at the top, it says, if it is greater than 0, meaning it's positive, right? You're going to have two solutions. Now, those two solutions might be decimals. They might be nice integers, but you're going to have two real number solutions that actually work out, okay? They could be both, in this case, they were both positive, but they could be positive or negative. Our parabola could be going up or it could be going down. It just means that if b squared minus 4ac, that means it actually crosses the x-intercept, and we have two roots or two solutions. If it equals 0, like in this case, our only solution is when x equals this 1.3. So we only have one solution if it comes out to equal 0. So if you plug in 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9, 36 minus 36 gives you 0. If it happens to be negative, and you plug in your b squared, negative 6 squared, so 36 minus 4 times 11 gives us a negative 8. That just means that your parabola is never intersecting the x-axis. And it wouldn't matter if it's above like this or if you actually had a parabola that was below. Either way, if we were looking at that, it's just telling us that the vertex, that it never crosses that x-axis. So that's the key thing with discriminant. So, if we are going to just, if some of the questions in your homework will just simply ask you how many real number solutions. And then on the test, the other thing it will do is when you're solving, you want to, especially if you're using the quadratic, check that b squared minus 4ac, check that it is positive or 0, because if it comes out negative, you're done. There's no solution. So it's kind of like x squared equals a negative number, no solution. So when we look at this one, the first thing they did is just simply taking that b squared minus 4ac, plugging in negative 3, squaring it gives us 9, minus 4 times 2 times 5. So if we're taking 8 times 5 minus 40 gives us that negative 31. And again, you can put this whole thing in your calculator when you're doing that. And since it's negative, we're going to say that there's no solution. It says, can you solve the problem another way? It says you could actually solve the equation and find any solutions. However, you need to know the number of solutions so you want to use a discriminant. So if you were looking at this problem and you're like, oh man, I can't factor it easily, and I don't want to use completing the square because I got 2x squared, so I'm going to use the quadratic formula. And you use the whole quadratic formula, you would have found that underneath that square root, you would have had plus or minus, and it would have been a negative 31. And because you can't find the square root of a negative 31, at that point you stop and there is no solution. Okay? So that's what you're looking at, that square root is negative. So, as we look at this problem, what some people were forgetting to do, just a little bit, was getting it equal to 0 first. So it asks how many solutions standard form. So if we are rewriting this, we're going to do this, please, in your notes. 6x squared minus 5x minus 7 equals 0. We now can identify our A, our B, and our C. I have some people that are, as they're doing the worksheet, are trying to get in the habit of not writing that quadratic formula, which, by the way, let's sing it. Are you ready? See if Mr. Gravlin could possibly hear you, because he does have classes here. All right, so here we go. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you've ever done Pop Goes the Weasel, there you are. It's all to that song. usually is. That's the easiest way people remember it. So if we are substituting in, Samantha, start me off. What are we going to put? If we put negative b.
Negative 5.
Yes, negative 5. Now at this point, could you then start putting that as just 5? Definitely. Plus or minus, Tanya, keep going.
Negative 5 squared.
Yep, negative 5 squared.
Minus 4 times 6 times negative 7.
So the only thing we really want to take a look at in this problem is our b squared minus 4ac. So we want to take a look at that negative 5, and we could finish solving this to see if we're going to have how many solutions, 2 times 6. But we are simply looking at this highlight part. So when you do your homework tonight, and it says, okay, what is that b squared, how many solutions do you have? This is what I want you to put down. So that negative 5 squared minus 4, and in this case, times 6 and times negative 7. Putting that whole thing in your calculator came out to equal a positive, I believe it's positive. What'd you get? 193. And so the question says, you don't have to find the solutions. The question says how many solutions? 2 solutions. Why do we know? Because this is a positive number. Now, if I ask you specifically to tell me the solutions, then you'd finish doing up here. So this next question says, if A is positive, okay, like here, and C is negative, like in this example, how many real number solutions will you always have? And so this is what I want you to think about in that b squared minus 4ac. If A is always positive, so you're subtracting, right? So you have a minus, subtracting, and then you have A is always positive, so 4 times a positive number is going to be positive, and C is negative. What's always going to happen to that answer? How many answers should I always have? If I'm subtracting a positive number times a negative number, what is always going to be the case? It's always going to be, what would happen if I have a number out here minus a negative? Always going to be, and this number out here we know is always positive, right? Because b squared always has to be positive. How many solutions should I always have? Always 2 solutions. So when you start looking at your problems and you're noticing A is positive and C is negative, you're always going to have 2 solutions. If it all depends on the order of like what b squared was when you're looking at the A and C, because sometimes you're subtracting, like in one of the homework questions it had like the square root of 25 minus 24. Was that in number 7 homework? And you were doing that and you had to square root of that. Well, that just comes out to the square root of 1. And so when you're looking at that answer, all right? So homework from yesterday, questions on any of those that I could answer. There really isn't much today. Today you really get the time to work. That's why I said I had a few people in this morning, and by all means you can turn page 586 in before you leave here today, or if you have it done, you can turn it in just a few minutes. But if you don't have it done, finish that first before you work on this worksheet, and I'll tell you which ones we're doing. Any questions you want me to take a look at? Yeah. 13. All right. So in 13, one of the first things we want to do in 13 is we want to get it set equal to 0. So we have 3x squared plus 19x minus 154. Ugly numbers, right? It's going to be pretty large when we are looking at that. So let's sing it just really quick for me. Ready, Joey? You weren't singing last time very loud. Come on. Here it is. Here we go. Everyone, here we go.
X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
And Hannah, where's the problem coming up for you? When you plug it in, so I have negative 19, right? plus or minus, I'm gonna take 19 squared. And I had a couple people in working this morning, they're like, well, my calculator's different than this one, and sometimes you have to put the square root in first, and other times you put the number, then the square root. Figure out which one your calculator is and do it, or bring your calculator and know that, I mean, I'm not gonna on the day of the test go, oh, remember that kind of calculator. They're all different. I would love to tell you, the graphing ones are different also when you're looking at those. So just be careful that you make sure you're understanding how to use it with your calculator. So as we finish this one, we had 4 times 3 times the negative 154. And divided by 2 times. So, did you find your mistake? Would you not put in?
I put 19.
Back here, yeah. So this whole thing, again, negative times a negative, that's gonna make this a positive, right? And I take that in. So 19 squared plus this whole thing is what we're taking the square root. Anyone else with questions? All right, in your homework tonight, oh, I thought I had it on here. 1 to, we're gonna do 15, just the odds, because I think you've practiced that quadratic enough. So it says use the quadratic formula, round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So 1 to 15 odd, and then 16 through 30 or 32? I think it's through 32. Yeah. 1 to 15 odd, and then if you turn to the second page, just go to 32.
Yep.
16 to 32 odd. And the main reason here, it just says use the discriminant and find the number of real number solutions. Do not solve, right? You're just going to use that b squared minus 4ac, and you're going to tell me, oh, there's 1 solution, no solution, or 2 solutions. Here it says find the value of the discriminant, so that's the first part of the answer, and then solve. So here you're doing both parts. You're finding the b squared minus 4ac, then you're using the quadratic. The nice thing about it, once you've already found the b squared minus 4ac, you really already have that part that's underneath the square root, so you can just finish that. These problems like number 30, you want to set it equal to 0. Same thing with number 16. You're looking at when it hits the ground. Number 17 is a really good one on asking you to explain. What does that determine? So hopefully those are making sense to you.